Start a small business. No need to work 40, 50 hours a week, slaving your life away. Obtain financial freedom, be your own boss, and create your own destiny. Moguls are the new superstars. The path to country club membership and a leased Mercedes-Benz is paved in gold as you take your business trips to Orlando or Vegas. Validation from your in-laws is just an LLC and Facebook business page away. At least, that's what they tell you anyways. Through social media, websites, and targeted ads, you're sold an image. Small business owners seem to walk on water. You'd think you're the last person on earth working a regular job with a regular boss. But there's trouble in paradise, and its name is in over your head. People start looking to start their own business, don't know what they don't know. But that's why we started our Small Business Confidential podcast, to share what we've learned from years of experience. There's not a lot of people in on this, so remember, dear podcast listeners, you heard it here first, off the record, on the QT, and very hush-hush.
Hi, everybody. This is Mike Reilly with another episode of Small Business Confidential, and with me is co-entrepreneur, fellow entrepreneur, Mike Ferrante. How you doing, Mike?
Fantastic, Mr. Reilly. Pleasure to be here.
All right. Well, the sun is out. It's about 5:30 Cleveland time, and we got 30 minutes to do the Mike Ferrante portion, and then we're going to have part two with another interesting person to talk about mentorship. This guy is hoping to grab the guy, friend of mine who is a psychologist, and he deals with mostly boys in the ages of 16 to 25, the failure to launch young men. So
sure.
So anyways, general thoughts, we were touching on it a little bit on our wide-ranging podcast on our last episode. Mentorship. You lead us off, Mike, just general thoughts before we get into the weeds.
Yeah. So I think it's the number one thing that most young people are missing. They think that, I went to school, I had an internship, whatever it may be. But I think that the biggest place they're missing the boat is finding one or more mentors and learning from them. In my hindsight, that's the one thing I was missing. It took me a lot longer to get my feet under me than it should have or could have, because I didn't have a solid mentor.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the pitfalls is we were talking about college and getting your MBA and grad school. Problem is, a lot of times you don't have any mentors there. Now, maybe you might luck out depending on what your professors are, but more often than not, there's an illusion that you're going to get all these degrees and then your advanced degrees, you're going to come out and you're going to be ready for business. And that is not how it works, full stop. I think you need, I think the mentors are like, we're in the middle watching this Ukraine-Russia war going on. One of the big differences between the Ukrainian army and the Russian army, Ukrainians are loaded with non-coms, the master sergeants. And that's also a big component of the American military. These are the people that they're not officers, but they have all this great experience in combat, war, whatever. And they are the anchor of, the platoon, the brigade, the battalion level. And that's something the Russians are lacking. That's why you're seeing a lot of generals die. But I don't want to get into the Ukraine-Russian war. But the point is that mentors are they're a special breed, the kind of mentor that you want to go out and search. How would you find a mentor if you were in your early 20s and you just wanted to start your own restaurant, start your own business, your own contracting business? How would you find a mentor?
Here's what I would do. I would identify companies and or people who are doing or have done what I want to do, and I would ask to interview them. And I would do that until I found someone who seemed to take an interest in me, who seemed to have the time and desire to be a mentor. Because, like you said, Mike, not everyone is wired to be a mentor. Not everyone is willing to take the time and teach. Not everyone's a teacher. A lot of people are out there doing their thing and they have no interest in being a mentor. But I would approach it not from the standpoint that we're all taught, hey, go out and get a job, you submit your resume and you wait for people to call you back. I think that the exact opposite is true. I think if you take the approach that I'm out here and I want to interview you, I want to learn more about, hey, contracting, Mike Reilly, can I come in for 15 minutes and interview you? And, I know that you're wired that way where you are a giving person and you want to teach and you want to bestow the experience and knowledge that you have on other people. And I suspect that if I were a young man in my early 20s and I called you up and showed a true desire to learn, our 15 minutes would turn into an hour. And who knows, maybe a regular get together where we start working together and you become a mentor. Am I wrong about that?
Yes and no. And I was thinking about different things when you were talking, how you would find a mentor. First of all, the issue of time. Somebody like me and you, we're so busy, We're not retired. Hey, besides doing my day job, Reilly Painting and Contracting, Reilly Properties, I'm also doing this podcast. So, and we're going to do a couple more podcasts on our Cleveland real estate investor. And time constraints come into play. Now, what I was thinking about, and I'm going to throw this trial balloon up, is sometimes instead of paying to get a MBA, I think Small Business Confidential is going to be launching and will be launching in the next couple of weeks some webinars where my time is worth money. I'm happy to act as a consultant and have a private webinar where we may be talking about 2 or 3 people for a couple hours. And there's a charge associated with that. And I know with the Cleveland Real Estate Investor, we've gotten to a point now where we've got investors calling. They want to find a good place to invest their money. Well, we charge for that. Now you don't charge for that as a realtor, but we're charging for it. And I can tell you one thing: I've saved these people hundreds of thousands of dollars in mistakes. And for $150 an hour and a bottle of wine, that's a pretty good deal. Okay. So my thinking is that a really good mentor, which, by the way, you know who Jordan Belfort is, Mike?
Name rings a bell.
Okay. Jordan Belfort. Everybody look that up on Wikipedia. Put me on pause. Jordan Belfort was the Wolf of Wall Street. Okay.
Of course.
If you saw that movie, then you see that, remember that great line, sell me this pen. It's in the front end of the movie. It's at the end of the movie. Well, guess who is doing private consultations on salesmanship? Jordan Belfort. Now that he's paroled, he's out of prison. The guy is a genius salesman, and he charges 1 Bitcoin, which is now worth 40,000. But there's a story in today's New York Times about Jordan Belfort. Everybody look it up. But I really think if you find the right mentor, sometimes that mentor should be a paid consultant. Or if you don't have the money to pay and you're in town, then you work for somebody as an apprentice. And, with the staffing shortages and, where do I find a good person? Hey, you pay your dues. Maybe you have a 6-month or 3-month contract and you work for the guy, for the person. And, you drive the truck, you wash the truck, you prep the kitchen, you look out over the shoulder. Maybe you're sitting down talking to the owner at the end of the day over a glass of wine and let him sort of unburden. You're getting paid and he's getting paid by having a good worker. Your thoughts?
I agree 100%, Mike. And that was my other answer to that question was, finding the right person to work for. And if you have to, volunteer your time. Who's going to say no to free help from someone who is eager and competent? Each year I have seniors, mostly seniors, but occasionally freshmen and sophomores in college, either high school seniors or those underclassmen in college, they'll find me online and they'll reach out and they'll say, "Hey, I want to do an internship with you." The seniors in high school, they're calling it the senior experience. Their task is to go out in the world and find someone who will allow them to work 20, 40, 60 hours, whatever it is, whatever their assignment is, for a company that interests them. Just today, I had a kid from Twinsburg High School reach out to me. And of course, I start out by asking them questions. I want to see how quickly they respond, how eager they really are. Are they just trying to fill a requirement for a class, or do they really want to learn? Because if I'm going to spend my time mentoring a young man or woman, I'm going to put them to work too. I mean, I'm going to get some value out of it as well, but I'm going to make it worth their while to come and work for me. So yes, I think it's brilliant. I do it almost every year. There's one or two kids that'll come work with me, and I think they get a lot out of it, and I put them to work.
Right. And I think one of the things that everybody's got to, on both sides of the equation, have to be mindful of is, all right, how do you find a good mentor? And Mike, you were saying, well, I interview them. Well, okay, interview them. What kind of questions are you going to ask? I think if you're the mentoree, then you're going to ask them how they screwed up. We talked about that in an earlier podcast. How did you screw up? Tell me about the good, bad, and ugly about your career. Where did you fail? How did this? What did you learn? Because at the end of the day, you do not want to be involved with a mentor who's just doing this out of a vanity plate. You want to get somebody who genuinely wants to help you. And if they want to help you, they're going to tell you the mistakes they made. It's almost like getting that sponsor in AA. These sponsors are very open about when and how they hit rock bottom, how they climb themselves out. And so using the AA sponsor model is probably a good way of you finding that mentor / sponsor in your career. And of course, we, on the other side of it, we're not interested in wasting time who's, somebody in high school to fulfill a requirement has got to go out and find a mentor. Really? I mean, that's just a time waster for me. Because, that person really isn't interested. All that person is interested in is checking a box.
I was going to say the same thing. Checking a box.
Checking a box, get a grade. Okay, I'm off to college, whatever. And I'm going to spend half my college time, drinking and getting shit-faced. Okay. So it works both ways. But I like it's almost like back in the day, in the Middle Ages, whatever, where they had the guilds and the apprenticeship, where that's how you learn how to be working with steel, or working with art, or you're cleaning up Michelangelo's brushes and you're looking over his shoulder, learning how he painted a masterpiece, or did a sculpture. So we have to establish the fact that the sooner you get a mentor, the better, right?
100%.
Why waste your time going up the down escalator and learning making all the dumb mistakes that you and I, Mike, made? We're trying to shortcut that and eliminate it. Now let's talk about, for example, what would the mentor teach you? What would be some of the things that you would teach your person? Give me throw a couple out there.
Well, if it's specific to real estate, yes, there are some specific lessons that I would make sure that they learn. But I think that the bigger picture is also important. So, for example, when I think about the shortfalls in my entrepreneurial career, I didn't know how to be organized. I didn't know how to create or implement systems, for example. So I'll give the example of when I was at a construction job where I had a great mentor for over 4 years. Something as simple as learning how to put together a scope of work for a job, learning how to interview a contractor. These were things that were specific to the job, but on a higher level, I learned how to organize a job, how to prioritize and really have a good grip on what was handling with this big picture And I had never had that before. That's not something you can learn in a textbook. So, that's my quick answer to that question.
Yeah, I would piggyback on that and expand by saying the first thing I would teach my mentoree is how to set goals and work backward.
Start with the end in mind.
Right. What's the goal here? And then okay, I want to say somebody says, you know what, I want to go to China, or I want to go to Japan. And okay, well, are you going to fly there? Are the borders open? All these, particulars as you work backwards. I think one of the things that I've been struck by as I've gotten older is, hear all these stories about somebody going into college and they want to be a doctor, they want to be a lawyer, or say they want to be a doctor. And they don't realize that they're actually squeamish at the sight of blood. Did you know that? So let's say somebody says to me, well, I want to be a doctor. If I'm your mentor, I'm going to say, why do you want to be a doctor? Well, my dad was a doctor. Okay, so what's involved being a doctor? Have you talked to your dad about what it is, or is your dad expecting you to follow in his footsteps? What is the reasoning behind what you are doing? I think a lot of people go into college, they take out loans. 50% of them drop out because they have an unrealistic idea of what they want to be, and they have no idea what their talents are. So starting to gain some inner wisdom about who you are and what you like to do and what you're willing to work for, I think is one of the top 5 things you have to begin to think about. Because right now, if you're in high school listening to this, or say you're in college, you've spent your whole life doing what people expect you to do. Your parents, your teachers, right? There isn't any conversation that you've had with yourself. Want to add on that, Mike?
I absolutely do. So I wanted to throw out there, what you're talking about is in this great book, Start With Why by Simon Sinek. And if you haven't grabbed that one, guys, write that down. Start with why. And it's all about, starting with the premise of why do you want to do something? And in some ways, it's a book about sales, but sales starting with, your why. What is it that makes you good at what you do? Why do I want to hire you? Why are you passionate about doing what you do? And I know saying the word passion is going to spark another conversation here where we say, oh, follow your passion and you'll be successful. That's not what I'm saying. Yeah. I'm just saying that, like in your example, if I want to be a doctor because 5 generations of my family have been doctors. Well, that's not a reason. That's not your why. That's someone else's why.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
The Small Business Confidential podcast is offering consultations and private coaching to those who have their own small business or are looking to start their own business. We have 45 plus years of experience and would love to extend that experience to someone willing to learn and grow. We will have a webinar on this around the end of May. More details to come. Also, if you haven't, check out our other podcast, The Cleveland Real Estate Investor, where we give guidance to all you outside investors looking to get in on the Cleveland real estate market. You don't know what you don't know, so we're here to give you the inside scoop. Find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcast.
What we've talked earlier about, finding your passion, that's bullshit. There was another good story in the New York Times today was about this young couple who decided they were going to live in their van. I'll tell you one thing, it looks cool for a couple of days. And then after that, the thrill is gone. And that's what the story was about. It was a pretty in-depth story, going to the bathroom in the middle of the night. Where are you going to go to do laundry? All of that stuff. There's a romanticism about what you think it's going to be like, and then what the reality, hits you. I think for a lot of people, the dirty little secret of why they want to, say, be a lawyer or be a doctor is that you can make more money. my son, the doctor. This is a profession, even though lawyers are getting laid off left and right because colleges are cranking out lawyers and there are too many lawyers out there. Medicine is becoming socialized. You really have to almost go 10 years to specialize in something before you see any kind of major bump in money. So if you're going into something where, I want to make some money, I want to be financially independent, then guess what? There is a wide array of options available. Now we're talking about a whole different reverse engineering of how you make money to be financially independent. And most of the time, if not all of the time, Mike, it does not involve college. If you want to be financially independent, start with having no college debt. Okay. Start with living in a duplex with a couple of roommates and somebody on the first floor that's paying your rent.
Yeah.
It's called reduced expenses. Actually have a budget of how much you're spending. Be open to have 5 or 6 different types of jobs that can fill needs out there where you're billing out at 30, 40 an hour. Because there are people nowadays that'll pay for that. But that is a whole different pathway. If you really ask yourself and sit down and ask yourself, why do I want to do this? And listen to yourself and don't try to manufacture the answer.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I bet if you pose that question to a lot of people, they would have some hollow answer that's meaningless, and it probably would explain a lot about why they are having no or limited success in whatever it is that they're doing.
Right. And when we think about small businesses, people want to start their own business. If you said, and we said this earlier on a podcast, I want to open my own restaurant. I want to open my own bread store. Boy, does that sound cool. Doesn't that sound cool, everybody?
Very sexy.
Very sexy. Very sexy. What are you making per hour? $4 an hour. If you're lucky, when it's all said and done, how much stress? It's like living in that van, right?
Oh,
I mean, the thrill is gone pretty quickly. Wouldn't you rather make enough money so that you could go out to a restaurant twice a week? Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah. Well, Mike, it's the difference between owning a job and owning a business. So I'll give you an example. A lot of contractors, they think they own a business. Really, all they own is a job. You've got the plumber who maybe has a helper and works all day, earns X amount, thinks, okay, I'm making good money, but then he's going home at night and doing his books and, he's in charge of the marketing. So maybe, posting on Facebook or paying for a thumbtack ad or whatever. But that guy doesn't really own a business. He's earning a wage in his own business. They say if you don't have an assistant, you are the assistant. So, how do you turn that if that's the kind of business he wants to have, how does he turn that into owning a business? It's when he's got a crew or 2 crews or 10 crews or whatever it is, and it becomes a business, kind of like what you did with Reilly Painting and Contracting. You are now a business owner. You're not earning a wage for painting houses anymore.
Right. And when you have that conversation with yourself that I learned a long time ago, which was the beginning of turning the business around where you're actually making a lot of money, is that you start realizing that the job involves not just the work, which is probably 60% of the job, but it's the selling of the job, the back office of the job, the setting up of the job, the planning of the job. So, we've talked, you're familiar with our work order system. And the foreman is not supposed to pick up the paintbrush or the chop saw. The foreman is supposed to organize the job. And when we first started doing this a long time ago, the foremen they felt very uncomfortable. It's like throwing a cat in a bathtub. They wanted to be doing something. They didn't understand what they were supposed to be doing was planning and organizing. and they weren't used to that.
Mm-hmm.
I found a lot of contractors that we would hire because they were failures with their own business. We'd put them on a job, and the first thing I noticed, they were always going to the store. They must have gone to the store 6 or 7 times. And finally, a little light bulb dawned in my head, and this is like 30 years ago. Oh, you know what it was, Mike? You know that and you folks, you wouldn't know this. Remember the Kingston house that you sold?
Sure.
I remember we were rehabbing that, and we had this one guy, and finally I said to him, "You're not allowed to go to the store. You go to the store, I'm not paying for your time." He goes, "Well, what happens if we need something?" If you need something, I'm going to ask yourself, why didn't you plan this the day before? Because they didn't understand the importance of planning. And everybody out there, when is the last time you turned off your phone, turned off the TV, all the noise that's out there, and just sat down for an hour and listened to yourself, maybe with a legal pad? Being able to have that conversation, that think time about what exactly is going on is the most important thing if you want to be successful in your own business. Because how can you learn from mistakes or make adjustments if you don't recognize that these mistakes have happened?
Yeah, it's a great point.
So the ability to have that conversation with yourself, to set goals, to organize, like you say, because that's what you're doing. You're organizing your thoughts, right, Mike?
100%. Yeah, that's why we always talk about working on your business instead of always working in your business.
Right. And so take everything we're talking about and then put those questions together to ask the mentor. Did you ever have an aha moment when you said to yourself, I got to do this differently? When there was a mistake, how long did it take you to recognize that there was a mistake? Did you put together a business plan before you started? Or did you just jump in and then realize I can't swim? Because that mentor should be able to answer to your satisfaction these fundamental questions.
Yeah. And the other thing we've talked about a couple books, but I think that we should always be looking for new material to soak up. You talk about your audio books, but so I'm of course in the real estate business, and I'm lucky enough to have what I consider to be the manual from graduating from being a real estate agent to being a business owner of a real estate company. And I'm not talking about a brokerage necessarily, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, it's a Gary Keller book, and it's a roadmap to go from being a real estate agent to owning a real estate business. And I don't know that every business or industry has something exactly like that, but I'm sure that material is out there. So just soaking up that information could be really helpful as well.
Yeah, that's another important question that everybody's got to ask themselves. How much do you actually read? Audiobook, reading? Do you read the New York Times every day? What do you read online? And if you're not taking any time reading or studying, actually thinking, then you're not going to be successful, because buried in those books, even if you read Wikipedia every day, read about the people that died, successful people. You will be amazed reading about their lives, how interesting, how different it was. How did they get from A to Z when they died? And the path they took was never a straight line. In fact, I've just gotten finished, and I highly recommend that everybody watch this, Ken Burns's bio on Benjamin Franklin. He wanted to go to Harvard. His dad, when he was 10, said, "You're done with school. You're done with school at 10. Well, I need you helping in the candle store, making candles." Finally took an apprenticeship with his older brother, who had a printing press. But Benjamin Franklin was reading when he was 5. He read and read, bought books with what he made. kept reading and reading and reading. And one of the historians said about Benjamin Franklin, I mean, this is the guy that was not only the founding father, but was one of the great inventors of the 18th century. He found how to control lightning. He invented the lightning rod, which was blowing up churches in Europe and the United States. Lightning was blowing up churches because they were the tallest structure in a town. Okay, so churches were burned or would be built, and lightning would come along and burn them. And he invented the lightning bolt, and then he helped draft the Declaration of Independence. He edited Thomas Jefferson's draft of the Declaration of Independence. He helped write the Constitution. I mean, you talk about not just a founding father, but a genius. And he did not go to Harvard. In fact, he wrote a scathing summary of Harvard about how much it was more geared towards raising gentlemen than raising intellectuals.
That's great. And Mike, when you mentioned reading about people who have passed on and learning from their successes and failures, I think another great strategy in seeking out a mentor is find these people before they're dead. I think that there are a lot of older people who are retired and they still want to do something. They still have value to give. And, so finding people in the field that you want to learn about and just, interviewing them, saying, hey, you used to do this. Can I talk to you about what you did and how you did what you did? And I think you'll find that a lot of these folks who are no longer working actively are more than willing to talk about themselves and give their knowledge, and they're a wealth of information.
I have a feeling that the best mentors, even if they're still 6 feet above ground as opposed to 6 feet under, are still working. They're always doing something. Benjamin Franklin, one of the things that Benjamin Franklin, they said, I mean, the guy lived to be 80 in the 18th century.
Yeah, for that time. Wow.
I mean, the average life expectancy was 40, 45, something like that. And so you didn't see a lot of 80-year-olds, but he was always reinventing himself. Always. In fact, he reinvented himself his last 5 years when he spoke out against slavery. And he had owned slaves 40 years earlier. But I think your mentor is somebody that is always working on bettering themselves. Always, that they don't look at work as a 4-letter word. They look at work as just a thread that is constantly going through their life. Be very wary about hiring a mentor who's now retired and all they do is play golf all day. I would not. I don't think that's. There's a lot of fish in that pond that you can catch. So, all right, Mike. Well, it's date night for you. So, final thoughts.
No, this is all great stuff, and it's what I preach when I go and speak in front of agents. When I'm on panels, when they ask me the question, what should a new real estate agent do? What's the number one thing they should do? It's the first thing I say, get a mentor, find someone either to work under or who's willing to show you the ropes.
Right. Exactly. And sometimes look at, if you're in high school now and you're really, really, really serious about being a player and having your own business, take a year off from college and develop that mentor and then go back to college. I'll close on this note. I mean, today I had the great pleasure of attending a high school lunch with my fellow classmates. There must have been about 25 of them there out of a class of 270. And most of these guys were retired. And, what was fascinating about this lunch, it, put me into a reflective period, looking back, when I was, just getting out of high school and just sort of struggle and figure out, what I wanted to do. And I was telling guys about my own college experience, which was fascinating because I went 2 years at Cleveland State because I just thought, well, that's what you do. And it was it was almost like an extension of high school. and just still playing pickup basketball, this and that. And then I just got tired. I got sick and tired of going to school, and I didn't go to school by third year. I started my own business and went to Hawaii for like 10 days, which I always wanted to do, and started Reilly Painting to pay for what was going to be my third year in school. But this time I was going to go away to college, and I went to Ohio University. And for me, college was a vacation because I'd worked every day during the summer to make money to supplement my student loan. So when I got down to college, it was, I am going to study what I want to study. And I had a radio show. I was playing pickup basketball. I was going out, seeing double feature movies at the Indie Movie Theater. It was wonderful. And the classes I took were not connected to any job because I already had a job. And I was telling these guys that, how it was, and then the business took off so much that my fourth year, I decided, well, I'll go to college at Kent State, which is closer to Cleveland. I can still work. And the irony of it is I never should have gone my fourth year. That third year was glorious down at OU. Met a lot of people, studied what I wanted to study, didn't worry about whether I was, going to get A's or not. And the irony, Mike, nothing but A's. Nothing wow. but A's. I mean, and this is from a guy who made, A, B's, and C's at, high school, and just did whatever it took to coast through. So, hey, listen, people out there, you're in high school, if you're listening to this, or you're sick of college, stop the bleeding, take some time off, do a couple of different jobs, make yourself read the New York Times every day, and make time to think, have conversations with yourself. So meanwhile, you have conversation with your wife tonight. Okay, Mike?
That's where I'm heading. All right.
All right. Okay. Thanks, everybody. We'll pick it up later. All right.
Thank you for listening to The Small Business Confidential. To support, please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Also add our podcast to your favorite streaming services. Everything is appreciated, and we'll be back soon with another episode and upload schedule. The person voicing the intro's name is Travis Reilly. Thank you, Travis. And the music was done by our engineer, me, Amari.